Hey, I'm Steven. I'm a professional voice actor, and you might recognize me from my shorts I've posted on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, or TikTok. What you also may or may not know about me is one of my biggest passions in life is Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing D&D for 6 years now, 4 of those years as a DM. In this video, I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey behind the DM screen. As a DM currently, and for the past 4 years, my goal has been trying to always improve with every new campaign that I do. Currently, I'm running one of my absolute favorite campaigns I've ever ran that is set in the Fallout universe, specifically Fallout New Vegas. This is a campaign I have been wanting to run for a very long time, and I could not have done it without the help of my friend Robert, who was a massive help. And without him, this campaign would have not existed. So thank you to Robert for helping me with this campaign and building it, as we had to build quite a bit of this from scratch, as the Fallout tabletop game, I believe, was not out a couple years ago when we were trying to plan it. And if it was, we didn't use it. We made our own thing. In this video, I will be breaking it down into the following sections. First, I'm going to be talking about why New Vegas, and when exactly does this take place in New Vegas. Second, I'm going to give a recap of what happened in the session. Talk about all kinds of stuff that happened with the players and I, the interactions, all that good stuff. Then, I'm going to talk about what went well, because, let's face it, that's one of the best parts of DMing. What goes well often sticks with the players, and that's one of the best parts of being a DM. So we'll go over the good that I personally thought I did a good job on. After we talk about the good, I'm going to be also talking about the bad, which is what I thought I could have done better, and what I learned from that session in particular. Because as a DM, and as any good DM should know, you always need to be learning from every single session you do. It's how you improve, and you only get better if you learn. Without further ado, the sun looms just under the horizon as we witness the dawn of the Mojave. Why New Vegas? And when does this take place? To start, Fallout New Vegas is what I believe to be one of the greatest video games of all time. It is one of my favorite video games I have ever played, and it has everything for a D&D campaign. It's got the characters, it's got the story, and it has the depth to it that to me was just the perfect setting for a D&D campaign. Now, speaking of story, I had to figure that out as well, which leads me to the second point of when this takes place. Ultimately, I decided to have this take place set 10 years after the events of Fallout New Vegas. Specifically, after the events of what many in the Fallout community consider the canon ending for New Vegas, which is when the Courier teams up with Yes Man to become the independent ruler of Vegas. 10 years after these events, a whole bunch of these factions have gotten shifted around. Some have grown more powerful, some have grown weaker, and some have even split off. The players were kind of dropped off right at the beginning at the Mojave outpost, right near Prim, and they've gone all the way from there up the map towards Good Springs, towards Nipton, Novak, all kinds of places. Now that you know why New Vegas is the setting I chose, and when this takes place, let's get into what happened in the session. Here's setting the scene. 4 players, the party, were inside the strip. Specifically, they have made their way successfully into the Lucky 38. At this point, they are about level 12. They've met the courier, and they've also met Joshua Graham, who accompanied the courier. As they were talking with the courier, something happened. A sudden attack on the strip. The players then had to act quickly, the courier sending them down the elevator to investigate a mysterious intruder that has entered into the Lucky 38 alone. The party tried to negotiate and ask the courier for help, and he simply said there was something far too valuable here he had to stay and protect. So the party went down, and it was during this session they had one of the most difficult fights in the entire campaign. So let's talk about what I thought went well in this session, because I do think despite the difficulty of this fight, a lot went really well in terms of engagement for the players and for myself. To give some more context, the character they fought against, the boss, he was the new legate under the command of Kaisar Lenius. And if you played New Vegas, you would know that that might sound a little bit confusing because Lenius was the legate to the original Kaisar. But because this is set a decade after the events of New Vegas, I've written it as the story being that Kaisar has passed, he passed from the tumor in his head, and eventually someone had to take control of the Legion. And Lenius took the reins from there and was crowned the new Kaisar. So, this character, this boss the players fought against, he was the second in command, and he came in alone. The fight that ensued was one of the closest fights I've ever seen. Not just because it was difficult, but because the players used absolutely everything at their disposal. They used every special perk, every skill, chems, stim packs, grenades, everything. Nothing was left off the table, and that is what I absolutely loved about the session. I think that's one of the best things that happened in the entire session, because one of my goals with this boss fight is I wanted the players to feel fear, and I wanted them to use absolutely everything at their disposal in their kits. Because up to this point, they haven't felt the need to really use those, because as we all know, when we play RPGs and we loot a bunch of stuff like power-ups or buffs, we wait till the very end of the game to actually use them. But in this case, I said to myself, you know what? I want to see what happens when they're placed into a scenario where they feel like they're backed up against a wall. So what I think I did really well in this section, this boss fight, is they felt fear. They genuinely felt afraid, not just because of the frightened condition, but because of how powerful this enemy was. And the lower the health he got, the more powerful he became as well. So there was multiple stages. One of the party members did unfortunately die in the end, but their sacrifice was not in vain, as this man, bleeding out, or should I say ghoul in the party, named Tommy Gun, pulled out a grenade and said one last thing before pulling the pin in front of this legate's face, killing both of them. A sacrifice that made the party live another day. So I think there was a lot of emotion, there was a lot of strategy, and there was a lot of fun in the session. And I loved that. I thought it was a really good challenge, and it really tested them. It was sad to see one of the players' characters die, and I really didn't want him to die. You know, obviously as a DM, I'm not happy when a player's characters die, because, you know, they've played it for a while and you grow close to the character. That being said, what about mistakes? Because obviously it wasn't a perfect session, but I want to go over what mistakes I made and what I learned. One of the things that I felt slightly guilty about that I saw as a potential mistake was when they talked to the courier before. He said he would try to get the turrets up online to help them out below. because there were turrets in that lobby room where they fought the boss. Ultimately, I decided not to because I really wanted to push them. Some could argue that wasn't a mistake, and that was a good way to test the party's limits because they were getting a little comfortable. And others could say, well, you should have probably given them some help. So that's a potential mistake I think I did make, where I should have given them some support. But my excuse I ultimately ended up using was that the courier ended up being quite busy with a bunch of enemies that climbed on the outside of the tower and into the 38 itself. Other than that, I felt that I didn't make too many mistakes this session. Maybe there were a few that I made in terms of what I chose to do with the Legate, but at the end of the day, I wanted to be in the mindset of that boss as much as possible, of saying to myself, okay, this guy's taunting me, or this guy's the biggest trouble, I'm going after him, right? Because he was smart, powerful, and fast. So what have I learned? Well, one of the biggest things I've learned is how much the party can really handle. This was definitely a deadly level encounter, if we're talking D&D terms, because this boss was pretty high level. I mean, in terms of PC level scaling, he was a level 16 to 18 character. So he was very difficult. I believe it was level 16, CR 16. For a party of 4 level 12s, that's a decent challenge. That's pretty tough. But again, that's 4 players against 1. And I wanted them to get used to the legendary actions and all that stuff. So I think I learned a lot more about what the party's capable of and what they can handle. I also learned that in the future to maybe be a bit more merciful, but I've also learned that I can be a little bit mean as well. I find it's always a fine line as a DM balancing difficulty with fun. If you make it too easy, then the players start to get overconfident and they feel like they can take on anything. If you make it too difficult, then that brings a bit too much dread to the players and they're afraid of doing encounters at all, which I don't want. So I've learned that balance is critical. So, you made it to the end of the video. I just want to give a huge thank you to you and everyone else watching this video. It's a bit different from what I usually do, but this is something that I want to experiment with as a potential new series. Dungeons & Dragons, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. And I feel like this definitely relates to voice acting because of all the different characters I do and all the different voices I have to do. But I think it's also fun for me to share how these sessions go and what I learned from them. So please let me know in the comments below if you and everyone else watching this video would like to see more of this kind of content. Let me know what you've also learned as either a player or a DM from sessions you've ran that were memorable. Until next time, I will see you all at the next recap. Take care.